Sinai, gave it to Yeshua, who gave it to the elders, who gave it to the prophets, and passed it on to the men of the Great Assembly. Second Temple period. Comes our Mishnah, comes our Brisa, Aleph, Moshe Niskadesh Ba'anan, V'kibel Torah Sinai. You already get a feeling, okay, we're going to get a lot more than what Pirkei Avos gives us. So Moshe, after ascending Har Sinai, Moshe became sanctified in the cloud of Hashem's presence that was hovering at the top of the mountain and received the Torah from Sinai. Shenemar vayishkon k'vod Hashem al Har Sinai leMoshe. And the pasuk tells us that the glory of Hashem rested on Har Sinai. The cloud covered him. Now, this is going to be tricky because we're going to see this brisa is one version of a much more elaborate discussion in the Gemara in Yuma about the actual sequence of giving the Torah. I don't know if this is familiar to you, but there are a lot of core vital ideas here, including this. It's not entirely clear the sequence of all the events, and there's a major machlokus. Again, it's brought down in Yoma, and it's definitely somewhat touched on here as well. So what's not clear in the pasuk, Vayishkon k'vod Hashem al Har Sinai, that the kavod of Hashem, the glory of Hashem, covered it. Now, one way of understanding it is it covered Moshe. And that means it covered Moshe for 6 days. Why did the cloud cover Moshe for 6 days? The Mishnah, the Brisa teaches the Taharo, to purify him so that he'd be prepared to receive the Torah. Zeh haya achar aseres hadibros, and comes our Brisa and tells us that this all happens after the giving of the 10 Commandments. Now, Diva Rabbi Yosef Glili. This is the position we're going to see Rabbi Yosef Glili. If you take notes, here's how to understand Rabbi Yosef Glili, and it's not the familiar sequence of events in this all-important definitional kind of event in history at the giving of the Torah. Rabbi Yosef Glili understands that Moshe first went up, received the 10 Commandments. Then he has this period before he's able to receive and then give over the rest of the Torah. He has this period of 6 days being covered by the cloud. The purpose, as we just read, is for some kind of purification. And after that, he then is able to give the rest of the Torah to Am Yisrael. Okay, so there are two different ways. Now, what's the purpose of the purification? How do you understand that?
It says for his stomach to be empty of all like food or liquid.
Excellent. So right. He had to get completely pure. I guess you'd say, like in the New Age talk, detoxed of physicality. Moshe Rabbeinu is about to go as high as any human being is capable of going, loftiest level that a person can attain. And he's got to detox, got to get rid of all that physicality, and that takes some time. It is reminiscent. The Gemara in Yuma. It's the very beginning of Yuma, by the way. Anybody wants to look it up? It's on Dalet Amud Aleph. It tells us that the Kohen Gadol before Yom Kippur also needs to go through a period of isolation, and he takes a week, very much like Moshe Rabbeinu, takes a week to isolate himself. To prepare for this awesome service, this avoda that he's about to embark upon. The idea, the meta idea for our purposes is, of course, whenever anybody's about to do something important and spiritual, you have to prepare yourself. Now, on a micro level, how much more you should do that before tefillah? How frequently, it's funny, it just came up in discussion, how frequently it happens to us that we're late, we're running, and grab whatever we need, wash our hands, tuck in our shirt, and then run into minyan. They're already halfway into the davening, and you just boom, 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 you're going and just rushing just to catch up. The poskim say that's not really lechatchila. A person should come early to daven, like the Gemara in Brachos tells us there are these Hasidim Rishonim who used to come an hour early to prepare themselves, to put their head in the right space. I mean, you're about to take 3 steps forward, and stand in the presence of the Shekhinah, that's not a small thing. And it takes some preparation. You got to get rid of all the schmutz. It's like Erev Shabbos is meant to be not just a time for physical preparation, which certainly is all that, but it's also, you got to clear your headspace. You're about to encounter the Shekhinah itself. And that's not something that you can do lightly. So according to Rabbi Yosef Galili, this is the sequence of events. Let's see the next few. Rabbi Akiva Omer, Vayichaseu Hanan Sheshis Yomim. He disagrees about what the cloud is covering. He says, Lahar velo l'Moshe. The cloud covered the mountain for 6 days. It didn't cover Moshe Rabbeinu. Vayikral Moshe b'yom hashvi mitoch ha'anan. And only after that, Rabbi Akiva interprets the verse that's when Hashem calls to Moshe on the 7th day from the midst of the cloud. And the 7th day, according to Rabbi Akiva, that's the day of the revelation. And what's the purpose then of this preparation? Rabbi Akiva concludes, Lachlok lo kavod l'Moshe. All of which the Torah, what it's trying to do is, and ArtScroll translated, is merely, the Torah merely wishes to accord honor to Moshe by singling him out among all the Jews. All the other Jews are there, but Moshe gets this special treatment. And then he receives only afterwards the Aseret Dibros. Okay, those are the two major views on the subject. There's a lot of detail. I'm reluctant to go into all the detail because it's a whole sugya in itself and worth going into. There are nafkaminas. There are practical differences between the 2 points of views. We're about to see two more variations on these two views that will add even more to the discussion. But that's a good overview for beginners. So far, so good. I'm Rabbi Nosson. Okay, the third view, which we're going to see, is actually in keeping with one of the views. Mipnei ma nisakev Moshe kol sheshes yamim v'lo shara alav dibur. Why was Moshe kept waiting for the 6 complete days before Hashem's word rested on him? Bishvil shiyamarek mikol this is Aviel. This is the line that you read into already.
Yeah.
Correct. Bishvil shiyamarek mikol achila u'shasiya shaya b'me'av. So that he can be cleaned out of all the food and the drink that was inside of him. Until the time that he came and he was totally, Kedushin we know means sanctified, but I think more specifically it's separate. Somebody has some noise in the background, maybe if you want to do something with the audio. Until the time that he became separate from this world and he'd become mamish like a malach. He'd become like one of the angels. Now, this view is like Rabbi Yosef Galili, the first view that we discussed, that Moshe needed some preparation time. And this is only Moshe who goes through this kind of preparation. And in that way, it's very parallel to the Kohen Gadol preparing for Yom Kippur. This is
Rabbi?
Moshe Rabbeinu. I'm going to read some of the commentary in the ArtScroll. It's excellent. They ask, why is this required of Moshe? They say because in ascending to heaven and claiming the Torah for Am Yisrael, Moshe would have to overcome the opposition of the malachim, of the angels themselves. Do you remember this? The angels were not at all enthusiastic about the Jews receiving the Torah. And Moshe, a mere mortal, should receive the Torah. He's going to have to go up above in some kind in the realm of the angels themselves to receive it. I mean, such a heavenly treasure given to a person of flesh and blood. They ask, Ma Enosh, what is a mortal that you should remember him, Hashem? Or the Son of Man that you should recall him? Who is this guy that he should be receiving the magnificent Torah? So Moshe, to kind of make a claim for himself and Klal Yisrael, had to kind of dress the part. You know, it's like we had to go to court one day. You'd have to wear a suit and a tie and try to speak the lingo of the legalese of the court discussion to make your case. Moshe's got to make his case, so he's got to kind of act like the angels as much as possible. The next few is also like Rabbi Yosef Glili, but it adds a different knech. Okay, that's Rav Nosson, and perhaps the same Rabbi Nosson that this whole book is attributed to. He teaches like this. Amar lo Rabbi Masya ben Charash. Rav Masya ben Charash responded, Rebbe, he says, my teacher, Rebbe lo amru ela la'ayim alav. He says the sages, Chazal, did not say this explanation. He disagrees. He agrees with the concept. He disagrees with the reason. He said, "What's the real reason why Hashem kept Moshe Rabbeinu waiting on the cloud?" He said, "La'ayim alav." We'd say in modern Hebrew to threaten him. Our school translates it as to instill fear in him. Kedei sheyikabel alav divrei Torah ve'ema v'yira b'irseis u'v'rzia, so that he could accept on himself the words of Torah with fear, awe, trembling, and quaking. I don't know the difference between trembling and quaking. I also know that zea, is often translated as sweat. Like really nitty gritty. He's schwitzed. When you're feeling profound anticipation, excitement, but dread, you schwitz, right? It's like it's core. You can't fake schwitzing, right? I defy anybody to try that. And you could do it. I mean, and it's not because of this hot summer sun. It's because of a profound a person's worked up emotionally. Now you have to realize this is really profound because, I mean, we're talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, Anav Mikol Adam. One imagines that naturally, given that it's Moshe, he was full of trepidation, fear, and yes, sweat already. So what does HaKadosh Baruch Hu need to do to put him through this whole 7-day? I mean, if you think about it, you're about to encounter the Almighty, the most sublime moment known to a human being. You're about to receive the treasure that we call the Torah. Why keep him? The suspense is killing me, kind of a thing. Why keep him in abeyance for 7 days like that? And again, to create fear, but the fear almost certainly was naturally there. It's Moshe we're talking about. What do you think?
Maybe not enough fear.
I didn't understand. Say it clearly.
Maybe not enough. Maybe not enough fear Moshe had.
Okay, it's possible. I'm not buying it. I'm not so satisfied.
Why?
Because it's Moshe.
But it is a HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it's the
Fair enough.
In all of history.
Fair enough. Could be. I have a different shot that I think works better, but yours might be right. I don't know if mine is right. The art scroll has one idea. I've got a different one. They say like this. Does anybody have the art scroll? Fine. You might consider buying it. I think it's a good investment.
I posted the link to the group, so if anyone wants to get it.
Excellent. Of the Sefaria.
No, Sefaria and the art scroll, if anyone wants to buy the actual art scroll book.
Oh, amazing. Great. Okay, so the art scroll says, by speaking of awe and rejoicing in the same sentence, because he does talk about rejoicing, the verse implies that when you're rejoicing, because you're receiving the Torah, that's thrilling, right? And the mitzvahs gladden the heart, don't forget to also have trepidation. The saying is that sometimes you might get, you might go overboard. Even Moshe Rabbeinu, in his pure simcha, his elation at receiving the Torah, that he might also forget to be quaking, trembling in his boots. And that's critical. So the 7 days drives home the point. I want to suggest also another possibility. It's not at odds with this. It's just in addition to this, which is that it's great mussar for all of us. Don't forget that Avos is nothing if not profound mussar. We too sometimes get overly relaxed, overly familiar with Torah, with the Beis Medrash, with our Rebbes, with our Chavrusas. Every time we sit and learn Torah, this is defining for us our mood, our attitude, our emotional state. We should be profoundly besimcha. I had a friend when I was learning in yeshiva who used to go around and remind everybody that they should smile. We're learning Torah. And he was right. A little obnoxious, but he was right. But I think the other one is a little bit harder to come by, and you don't feel it as much, and that is we should be also trembling and sweaty. We're probing the depths of Hashem's world and his mind. Don't forget the Torah. Istakli v'yaraisu vara alma. Hashem looked in the Torah, created the world. There is nothing more sublime. I'm learning right now, my son-in-law David, who some of you know, Nomi's husband, he's in bidud. He's in quarantine, probably unnecessarily, but he's very careful and very safe. So he's bunking up here by us, and I'm taking advantage of him. And we're having a chavrusa these days. I'm learning the perush. We're learning together the perush of Rabbi Yonah on Avos. I'm all about Avos these days. So Rabbi Yonah is one of the go-to must-learns, even though it's really long. His commentary on Pirkei Avos. Remember, it's one of the 4 things that Rav Wolbe says a person must finish before he leaves yeshiva. Avos with the commentary of Rabbeinu Yonah. So we were learning Rabbeinu Yonah.
What are the other 3?
What's that?
What are the other 3?
Anybody remember?
Mesilas Yesharim cold.
Right, Mesilas Yesharim.
Was it Chumash Rashi? Or
Chumash Rashi and Ramban. And the other one's an easy guess. Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah. Yeah, Shas is good if you can manage that. Shas is a good one. A nice Aviyah. But he doesn't say that. So those are the 4 essentials.
Just don't.
Okay, you said Avot was the first one?
I don't know what the order that he brings out. I don't recall the order. I would imagine the Chumash would be the first with Rashi and Ramban.
Wait,
But Avos makes it up there. Avos, probably followed by the Mesilas Yesharim, and probably followed by the Mishnah Berurah.
do you mean Pirkei Avot or something? Like
Do I
it's
mean what?
like well, what's it like? It's Pirkei Avot or something else?
Pirkei Avot.
Oh,
Pirkei Avot, yeah. And it's like must read, essential kind of material.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah.
You said Mishnah Berurah. I'm wondering, today there's easier books to read for learning these kind of things. Why did you say Mishnah Berurah?
And I would also qualify, for Edom and Mizrach, you should learn the Yalkut Yosef or the equivalent, or whatever, or the Ben Ish Chai or something like that. And if you have another primer, I only hesitate there because it has to be of the caliber of the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is understood, at least in the Ashkenazi world, although also in the Sephardi world, as being really definitive. It's so clear and organized that, Dirshu, this wonderful project that makes it more contemporary and brings all the later poskim. You know that there's a Sephardi Dirshu. When I learned with Eliyahu Kabilio and Gilad a couple years ago, last year actually, we were learning Dirshu, and we learned both the Ashkenazi Dirshu and the Sephardi Dirshu. And the Sephardi Dirshu has the Reb Ben Sion Abba Shaul and Reb Avadia and all the Sephardi poskim, but all organized around the Mishnah Berurah, interestingly, because it's such a clean, clear repository of basic halachos.
Rabbi, this idea of the 6 days covered in the cloud before the 7th day when Hashem calls us, I can't help feeling like this is relating to Shabbos also in a way. We have 6 days that lead up into Shabbos every week, where Shabbos is, it's Mein Olam Haba. It's a day where we're with Hashem. All, Nefesh Shimshon, everything he says. Is there anyone is that a valid point, or is that
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything of this dimension, when we're encountering the Shekhinah, right? We should. Shabbos is absolutely relevant to discussion, but it's not just Shabbos. Do you know they tell stories about Rav Chaim of Volozhin? When he would go visit the Vilna Gaon, his students would accompany to go, as he went to visit his Rebbe, he would become noticeably agitated on the way there. He would start trembling and breaking into a full schwitz. And by the time he arrived at his Rebbe's house, he was, almost beside himself. Because for him, that was, I would be the same encountering the Vilna Gaon, but he was encountering the Shekhinah by seeing his Rebbe. Coming to the Beis HaMikdash. When you come to the Beis HaMikdash, you come to the area of the Mikdash today, right? And you should go with that same awe, that same trembling, that same wonder. You haven't been there 30 days, It shouldn't even be a conscious thing almost. The halacha is obviously any Jew who's not been there in 30 days, you tear kriya. Well, of course you tear kriya. It's a natural extension of your emotion right now. We don't have the base of mikdash right now. We're in a place of such godless. Eli, what are you going to say?
I think he was making more of a point of the pattern of 6 days of
For sure.
work and
I'm
7 days
darshaning.
of...
It's not Pashup Shot. It's not Pashup Shot here. The Pashup Shot is
No,
specifically referring to Matan Torah. But I think you could darshan like that, the 6 days going into 7 days, Shabbat. That is that kind of pattern set up, that we need to have that time in abeyance, waiting and building the emotion until we get to Shabbat. I think that's a drasha you could make on this brisa, yes.
Also, in terms of personal work, probably the serious as well. Chesed through Malchus.
Elliot, didn't understand all the words. Also in terms of
the 7 serious, and Malchus receives all of them, and that's why Shabbos.
Lots of sevens, all relevant to the discussion. Correct. How about a story, kids? Anybody want a story? We're gonna have a lot of stories now. We got a little. Okay, there you go, Eitan. We have a lot of Gadata. It's Avos Nosson is incredibly fun. All great stuff here. Yeah, Yitzchak Chaim, I don't want to cut you off. What did you want to say?
No, it's okay. I just wondered who the list was by.
You wanted to know
The 4 things. The 4 things. Who was it by? Which rabbi?
Oh, that was the Ali Shor, who's considered one of the preeminent Bali Musar of the last generation. Rav Shlomo Volby was his full name. His yeshiva is actually right behind Piap, if that's a reference point, if it sounds familiar.
Oh, it definitely is.
Yeah, I
for
figured.
sure.
Okay, so that's that. His yeshiva was there. He lived in Kiryat Moshe near the bus station, and I was zocha to go. I asked him shilas. I went to hear his base Musar, and here we give his Musar shmuz, and that was a big schus to do that. Yeah. Anyways, that was his book. Is known often as the Ale Shor, and it's in the Ale Shor he brings this idea, and makes sense. They're like basic kind of things you want to cover in your life. Like, I think I'm claiming Avos Rabbi Nosson too. Okay, we have a story. The end. We'll have to see what this has to do with anything. On the surface, it seems to connect because we just learned from Rav Masya ben Charash. And so he's the 4th view that we saw, and now the story involves him. Ma'aseh she'era b'Rabbi Yoshia, Rabbi Masya ben Charash. There's an incident that took place with Rabbi, who's the Rebbe, and Rav Masya ben Charash, the students. Of course, what else would they be doing? Both were sitting and they were delving into the words of Torah study. Perish Rabbi Yoshia, the Derech Eretz. As they were learning, though, Rabbi Yoshia found that he couldn't make a living anymore. He was the Nosson is he encountered financial difficulty, and he went into what's called Derech Eretz, which in this case quite clearly means he went to work, and he stopped formally learning as a full-time occupation. Amar lo Rabbi Masya ben Charash, his student, then said to him, Rebbe, malach alazov divrei Elokim chayim v'lishtof b'derech eretz. Rebbe, he speaks respectfully. Why would you abandon the words of the living God and become absorbed in worldly occupation? Does this remind you of a famous Agadata? Little hint, it's in Shabbos, Gemara in Shabbos. Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son Rabbi Lazar exit the cave after 12 years, and they see farmers working down in the valley below. And everywhere they look, fire darts out of their eyes, and they burn, and they're upset because they've been in such a transcendent state of spirituality, learning with Eliyahu Navi no less, and in such a state of ultimate, just spiritual bliss, that the idea that some people would spend their time, the precious minutes walking on this side of the earth before we go underground, they spend that precious time working, chas v'sholom, right? Who would waste a minute of learning Torah? So that's called to mind here as Rav Masya ben Charash asks his Rebbe, would you abandon the words of living God and become absorbed in the worldly occupation? This is the first brisa in Avos Rabbi Nosson, and I'm remarking here too, it's interesting. as in Pirkei Avos, we'll see that Torah study is the central theme of the book of morality, both in Avos and then the elaborate version of Avos Rabbi Nosson. It looms large. It's everything. It's Kiem Chayenu V'Orach Yameinu. They are our days and the length of our lives. And so fittingly, as we launch into that, we get this story. The answer. The question continues. Even though Rav Masya continues, you're my teacher and I'm your student, still, Ein tov lazov divrei Elokim chayim v'lishtov b'derech eretz. He really hits it hard. He's not subtle at all. He said it's not good to leave the words of the living God and become absorbed in worldly occupation. Now, to be fair, Rav Masya is described as a Talmid Chaver, which means he's not formally a student, he's like a student peer. Have you heard the expression Talmid Chaver before? I mean, he was an inferior, but just by a little bit. I mean, essentially, we're learning in Chavrusa. There's a parallel story. Anybody learn Maseches Tainis? In Tainit, we learn about Rabbi Yochanan, the great Rabbi Yochanan, who's the most mentioned figure in all of Shas, with his friend Ilfa. And they're also steiging away until similar kind of a dynamic. Ilfa gets into some difficulty, and he goes into business. And he darshans from a pasuk. He said it's all very good. He says there shouldn't be anybody who's poor, but he was very poor, so he assumed, okay, well, I guess I'm at the stage. I have to go to work. I have to make a living. Rabbi Yochanan got a heavenly sign and he was about to go as well, go to get a job, but he got a siman, he got a heavenly omen, a sign that told him, no, go back, learn Torah, and he did. And he darshans another verse. He said, the poor will never cease from the land. Okay, so I'm poor, Nebuch. Nishkefer lach, I'll deal with the poverty, I guess. That's just the way it is in the world, but at least I'll be able to learn Torah. Ilfa was not convinced. He went on his way. Rabbi Yochanan returned to the base medrash. Ilfa, can anybody quote some of the Torah that Ilfa taught us? Precisely. Rabbi Yochanan, meanwhile, became the Gadol Hador and the most mentioned figure in all Shas, which is something that you'd like on your resume, and it's not there. I'm sorry to tell you. Anyway, so it's a similar kind of dynamic now between Rav Masya and his Rebbe, his Talmid, he's the Talmid Chaver of Rabbi Yoshia. V'amru, and they say, right, the people who knew the two, Rabbi Yoshia and Rav Masya, they said, Kol zman sheyoshvim v'oskin b'Torah hayu osin mekanin ze lazeh. As long as they were sitting and they were learning Torah, they made themselves rivals with each other. What does that mean, rivals with each other? Did you ever see people go, anybody go into a good, stark, Sephardi-based medrash before? Did you ever go into such a place and get terrified because they're mamish screaming their heads off and you think they're about to tear each other to pieces?
Yeah, with L'Shem Shemayim, that's the...
Oh, L'Shem Shemayim is gorgeous. It's a great thing to behold. I mean, sometimes you see that Nazim, but they don't know how to do it properly. They have to learn from Sephardim in this case. Anyway, so that's like you become like enemies in the base medrash. What's that?
In Or Sameach, I don't know how Rabbi Zweig is doing right now, but when Rabbi Zweig was still in Or Sameach, he had a chavrusa 2 o'clock in Laufer, and I forget who his chavrusa was. Also it was one of the Rebbeim in the Mechina program, and they would argue no tomorrow, but then afterwards it'd be the same way.
And and it's interesting. Sometimes, I mean, you hear stories like this. Goyim will come in and watch the Jews learning, and they'll turn to each other and think, "Why do they hate each other so much?" But this is how we show each other great love, right? This is the mamish machlokes l'shem shemaim, and they leave the closest of friends, right? Having hashed out whatever sugya they're working on and working it out, and then it concludes like that too. And when they would part from each other, they would leave like friends from their youth, right? That's brought down. The Gemara in Kedushin says as much too. In the base medrash, they appear like enemies. but then they don't leave until they become devoted friends, or as they work out whatever their differences are in learning, and actually it's a bonding experience. They become closer than ever through that.
Bleiweiss,
Yeah.
is that a good thing? Like, meaning when I look at it, like I'm saying, like all this, like this yelling back and forth, like it seems awesome. I'm saying, like, is that like the way it's supposed to be?
I think it's culturally sensitive. I don't think you should, there's a tendency for people who are not used to this to sort of put on an act too. I think you have to do what comes naturally and organically. If it's not natural, don't suddenly become Mr. Hothead. But I think when it is natural, I think it's beautiful. In other words, you get worked up in a sugya, your chavrusa says an idea that you think is absolutely outlandish, and you start screaming at him, and he starts going back because you're so, what are we doing after all? We're seeking truth. And we're so engrossed in the pursuit of truth, and you hear somebody who's on the same quest, but you think he's totally off base. So you just can't let him get away with that. But then he, meanwhile, he's convinced that he's on a mahalach, he's like on a certain path, and he's not to be deterred. And so he's going to defend his point of view. And one of them sometimes persuades the other, fine. But sometimes they stay stubborn in each of their views. But that's part of the whole discourse. And when it's l'shem shemayim, again, it's quite correct.
So it's not bad.
Now, say it again.
No, it's good. I got the point.
Yeah.
Isn't it better for them to work on their own?
I should point out what Ellie?
Isn't it better for them to if I strongly disagree with my chavrusa, so normally for me the work is okay, hold my thoughts and just take a second to calm down, and gently explain to him why I don't agree with him, and he'll explain to me why he doesn't agree with me. I'll work it out gently and nicely.
I think you have to know your audience. If that works for you, that's great. And if you're Chavrusa, if you would start yelling at him, he would just run out of the room. Then that's not the right approach. What you're doing is better.
Like ego management. I just need to ego
management. Fine. Use your discretion. Use your discretion. This is giving you an image, right, of the fire and the passion and the devotion of proper students in the base medrash.
I think he has the same question as I did, which was that isn't that portraying a certain act of midos by yelling and this and that? No, I'm saying, isn't that opposite to the way we were taught?
Not at all. Not at all. Again, to an outside observer who's not used to that culture, maybe it looks like that. But in the culture, it's absolutely acceptable, and there are no hard feelings. Everybody understands that you're doing it l'shem shemayim. When you learn some of the mefarshim, the parsha, when they go into each other, when the Ramban takes on virtually everybody, and he is scathing sometimes. The way he talks about Rashi and Rambam and Oyev and Ezra. You think, wow, they tars and feathers them, right? But then you realize that when they did it, it was out of respect and love, and they just hated what the other guy had to say.
The fact that they've done that, I don't think it really helps me so much, because I don't understand where they're coming from. Why could you just, why isn't there the anivas there to just go, okay, and often they do, just go, I haven't been zeicha to understand where they were coming from. Why do you get the Maharal, Rambam smashing their words?
Forgive me if I tell you. No, it's not that. No, I was going to, otherwise, you'll forgive me if I tell you they're hopelessly British.
What?
Right. It's culturally specific. This in some place. That's why I say Sephardim do it more than Ashkenazim, and it's great. And it's not lack of midos. It's a quest for truth. And we're so engrossed, and we're all in this together. We're going to try to find the truth together. So no hard feelings, really. And we'll come out of this better, closer.
The truth is no less brought out if you're shouting it out. You can talk about it gently and be really. Not sure.
As I said, it's culturally specific. Ben Richmond, I see you come in. I haven't greeted you. Welcome. Avos Rabbi Nosson is the first of the nights. Yes, Negan.
I just I finished at the end of Megillah, Masechet Megillah. So it says over there, I forgot the exact lashon, but it's like any city where there's two Talmidei Chachamim that aren't nochin ze b'ze b'halacha. I don't know how you they're not comfortable. I guess I assume that means that they're not polite with each other, and they don't accept and agree with each other in halacha. so then like their Torah is not accepted. Like, how do you explain that Gemara?
Yeah, it's not quite this, but I hear why you're asking the question right now. Look, in those days particularly, they had to work out the halacha. That was of the essence, because the Jewish people was in a spiritual state of free fall, decline. And so they had to come to some kind of terms, some kind of consensus within the halachic process to work out, okay, tachlis, this is after the end of the whole sugya, yeah, but what do people do? I think that's really the attitude in that Gemara. I see our time is limited. I wanted to just kind of circle a couple squares before we leave this and give us, there's a lot more here. I'm really just giving you some of the basics here, but there's a lot more that's in this rich commentary. I'm sort of forging a balance between wanting to move a little bit, but also want to talk about the brilliance here. One comment, of course, is that Masya ben Charash would go on to become one of the Gedolei Hador. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Rome. We hear about his base medrash. The Gemara in Sanhedrin talks about it. He had a beis din that was considered the leading beis din of his time in general. And Rav Yoshia, not as much. So it's similar kind of a dichotomy like Rabbi Yochanan and Ilfa. What's this story doing in this Mishnah? So there are different suggestions. One of them is the reason why Rav Yoshia and Ilfa leave is because of perceived poverty. And the idea that a person would enter a physical kind of destitution is very difficult. And there are times when a person simply has to go to work. But when and at what point, we saw that Moshe Rabbeinu was willing to endure utter physical deprivation. I mean, he didn't eat and drink for a week, something that's not normal. And he obviously had some miraculous assistance in doing that. How much should a person deprive himself to learn Torah? It's another one of these things that's highly subjective. The Art Scroll quotes the Chidah, the great Chidah of the 18th century. He said that really he understands both of these Gedolim, Rav Masya ben Charash and his teacher Rabbi Yoshia, must have had enough to cover their basic needs. Because the Chidah understands that if you were really starving, you have to go get a job on some level. They disagree because he had enough, but maybe not enough, if you know what I mean.
What about Hillel? Wasn't Hillel a real pauper?
He sure was. Not only that, the Gemara cites Hillel as one of the people that, a poor person can't use the excuse, well, I'm too poor, I can't learn, because you always point to Hillel, who was the utter pauper. He's a complete destitute person, and, what's your excuse? What's that?
How does the Chidah understand that?
Yeah. So, okay, the Chidah would say that's Hillel, and maybe not everybody's capable of that. Perhaps that's what we mean. We say that a person can't overreach in his own personal tzidkus. Some people have limits. You think yourself as a bigger tzaddik, and then meanwhile, you or perhaps your wife, she's going to suffer the deprivations of poverty even more than you will. Just can't deal with it. Okay, well, you can forgive yourself for being a human being. And Chidah continues, he says, Rabbi Yoshi advocated learning full-time study to leaving full-time study because he was too stressed, right? And he felt he had to support his family more generously, and that was the point Rav Masya disagreed on. And it's utterly relevant today, and it's relevant to a sugya some of us encountered last year in Brachos, the Machlokas, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Yishmael, about just how much does a person need to leave yeshiva to make a livelihood at all. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai indicates not. Rabbi Yishmael seems to say that you have to go out and make a living, and there's a lot in this sugya as well. Our Breiweiss is just one of many sources that goes there, that delves into this. But we'll pick up on the second Breiweiss in Avos Rabbi Nosson tomorrow. Bezras Hashem. Questions or thoughts?
Yeah, one question. So, for example, we know that we mentioned Ali Shor earlier, and we know that Ali Shor was really written by Ravolbi towards the Yeshiva Bacher.
Yes.
Was Avos DeRabbi Nosson, would we say, similar, or more generalized to be part of all Kloisel.
What? I didn't get the Ali Shore. What's the connection
So
with Ali Shore?
So at least I'm quoting Rabbi Greenwald here. When Rabbi Greenwald, when we would learn Ali Shore and before Shiur from Nosson, and Rabbi Greenwald would say sometimes like that the Ali Shore was written where it will be more towards the yeshiva bacher.
I hear. Okay, yeah, in that way. Okay, yeah.
Right. So the Avos Rabbi Nosson, was it written as a
In
klal
neither this
or?
nor that. No, because the Ali Shore is a modern work, so there are different populations now. In the days of the Tanaim, interestingly, the Jews, we were very sectarian near the end of the Second Temple period. They were the Tzdukim and the Baitusim and the Essenes and the Christians, all these different groups and people off the derech, and sort of resembled our world today. But with the destruction of the Second Temple, they all left. And suddenly we find that the only Jews are from. And actually, Rav Victor Miller makes this point for the period about 400 years or so of the Tanaim and the Amoraim, the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Gemara. You have people who are not necessarily holding, but what that means is that the shul that they don't daven in is the Orthodox one. There was no sect or deviation. And so when Avos Rabbi Nosson is speaking, it's speaking to Amcha, it's speaking to Jews in general. I don't think it would make that distinction between a yeshiva guy versus a balabos, which is what you're implying. He's saying this is the way it is in life. But we have two views. I mean, you could say, okay, Rabbi Yoshia is a legitimate view, and you could rely on him to say that, okay, some people have to leave and go make a living. All right, I'll see you here tomorrow. Or if you want to come back in, now it's about 10 minutes. We're gonna do a 20-minute every night. We do 20 minutes on Gemara in Makos. If anybody would like to join, great. Hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much, Rabbi.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah, welcome. Bye.